Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Captain's Recap. I am your host, Captain B-Nard, of course, and today we are going to be discussing the BHDL4 Week 3. And here to discuss all the exciting Week 3 action with me is a very special guest, a longtime Discord friend slash rival of mine. All I can say is bonjour, his name is Abomination. Welcome aboard, Abomination.
Yes, bonjour. My name is Abomination. Welcome back to the BHDL. This is the recap for week three.
That's right. And yeah, I think you do the bonjour better than I do. I'm not Canadian, so or French, or which
What?
which I assume you may be both, but or maybe you're neither. Who knows? But regardless of that,
I okay.
do you want to answer that? You don't have to.
I do not speak French at all.
All right, fair enough. All right, so um, but yeah, we're here to discuss all the exciting action from the BHDL for Week 3 here. A lot of good games to talk about, quite a few upsets to talk about as well, and a lot of hacks to talk about along the way too. So, yeah, I think having said all of that, we are ready to take a look at our first matchup here for Week 3. So, our first matchup to look at is going to be actually your matchup, Abomination. That is going to be you and your ABCDEFG Athabasca Miltanks taking on our former two-time BHDL champion Raymond and his Mamoswine Doubters. So I have to say, this was the game probably of all of them this week that I was very much looking forward to more than any. To be honest with you, just because I was really interested to see how you would match up against Raymond. I know this is your first season here in the BHDL, although you're certainly no stranger to draft leagues or competitive Pokemon. But Raymond has kind of been like the standard bearer here in the BHDL. He's, as I said, former two-time champion, and the worst he's ever done in this league is make semifinals. So that tells you what kind of player he is. Obviously, you've been doing very well for yourself in this league thus far. So I was very interested to see the two of you match up. So. Um, Looking at this game on paper, of course, on his side, he's got some big threats like the Latios, the Ogre base form, capable of holding an item, which is, of course, very important. He's got the Terrapagos, the Tinkaton, of course, the Mamoswine. Took him 4 seasons, but he finally did grab his mascot there. But he's also got the Houndstone, the Terra Captains, Lantern, and Blaziken. A lot of good stuff going on over there, as opposed to on your side, a very, very solid team. I know in the power rankings that we did for this league, I should say that I was a part of. Your team was definitely one of our top teams that we saw with good reason, as you've got a lot of really strong stuff going on over there. Very bulky and very offensive team with stuff like the Great Tusk, the Clefable, the Dragonite, Heatran, Terra Captain Jolteon is obviously huge. Terra Captain Vileplume as well, and of course Chinchino. So when I look at this matchup on paper, I do think you guys are pretty evenly matched. Although if pressed, I would actually give a slight advantage to you on paper. I think that um, for the fact that Ray has that Luminion on his team, which we'll talk about when we get into the game, actually. Spoiler alert. But yeah, I think,
Yeah.
and I know Ray's going to hate me for saying this, but I have to say it anyway, so get ready with the vodka, Ray. But that Luminion makes his team feel a little shallow, shall we say. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I do think you have a little bit of the edge on paper here. Your a lot of your big threats seem to match up relatively well against his team, but this is your game. I'll kind of let you fill us in more here on what your thought process was going into this match.
Okay, so going in, my biggest fear, I had two big fears. I was very afraid of Mamoswine because if you look at my team, Dragonite is times 4 weak to ice, and Heatran is times 4 weak to ground, and those two kind of work well together. But Mamoswine is like the one Pokemon that can crush them both without really much hesitation. So I was very afraid of Mamoswine, and Terapagos. The only thing on my entire team that resists normal is Heatran, and Terapagos can run Earth Power. So Terapagos was destined to be really good. but it didn't show up.
Yeah, we're gonna get to that in a second as well. Good points, very good points there. Um, so yeah, uh,
Uh,
fair enough.
yeah,
Anything else you'd like to add, or that pretty well sums it up? Sums your thought
uh,
process up.
because that was the biggest fear on his team. But I knew going in, for me, I had uh he didn't take steel type moves very well, so I felt like Heatran was much better offensively than defensively. So I guess Heatran was what I was putting a lot of my faith in. Uh, but I had to get rid of Mamoswine. It was very scary.
Fair enough. Fair enough. There it is, the infamous quote. Scared. We're getting it out of the way early. All right. So,
Yes,
um,
yes. I won't say that
yep.
anymore.
So if we take a look at the actual game results here, we will see that it was in fact you that took the win in this game, 2-0. It was a pretty hotly contested game, good game, I think. I will say this game, especially in the early going, felt like a power struggle between the two of you. Jockeying for position. I felt like you, as you typically always do, brought some very creative stuff to the match. I think Ray did as well. Although, unfortunately, I believe to his detriment, because as you mentioned, and as I alluded to before, of course, he opted not to bring the Terrapagos to this game, which I think was definitely a sizable tactical error on his side. And he opted to bring the Luminion to this game. And I know, you know what? I know Ray. I know he loves his Luminion. I get it. I understand that. He wanted to bring it to a game, he wanted to use it. Um, I don't think this was the week to do that, because I've said this before on these recaps and in the power rankings video as well. Um, and I'll say it again. Anyone out there, any coach out there who does not bring their best into a game with Abomination, do so at your own peril. That's all I can say. Because this guy means business. He might have goofy sets sometimes, unorthodox sets, I should say, but he knows how to get it done. So I definitely don't think this was the week for Ray to meme as he did, but he chose to do so, and those were the consequences, unfortunately for him. But it was a solid game through and through. Despite that, I think you both played very well. I think you probably played a little bit better than he did. I think the prep was very solid, despite his decision to bring suboptimal choices like Luminion. I think your prep was a little bit better than his as well. But tell us about the game from your side there.
So I just want to say, in Luminion's defense and also Raymond's defense, Luminion is a perfect counter to Suicune, which is on my team. I can't Calm Mind in front of it because he can always encore me, and I can't touch it with water type moves because it has Storm Drain. So he brought Luminion thinking I was going to bring Suicune, but I actually did not bring Suicune.
All right.
Not really because of Luminion, actually, but I didn't even think about Luminion standing in its way.
As I'm sure no
But
one
it
would,
would
but
have.
continue. I don't think anybody
Yeah, not
preps
really,
for a
but
game. I don't think anybody preps for a game in fear of Luminion, but nonetheless, continue.
because Luminion was so like it was talked about a lot, I was thinking maybe there's like a 30% chance that he was gonna bring it. It
All
was
right.
like just because we were talking about it a lot. But um what happened really in this game is I felt probably about 3 turns in, I felt very good because none of my guys were dying. A lot of my guys were taking less than 50%, which is optimal. So I had a lot of tanks on my team, which, I usually do.
Of course.
My Reuniclus was ready to spam Future Sight on Raymond's team that he brought. The only resistance to Future Sight was Latios, which it was Assault Vest, so it could take that very well. But I felt as though Reuniclus was prime to do a lot of damage. But unfortunately, about halfway through the game, she got crit by an earthquake and died. Now,
Yes.
before that happened, I was actually kind of feeling that maybe I had a chance to get a 6-0, maybe.
All right.
But after Reuniclus died, I just crumbled backwards and I lost a lot of guys. very quickly. But at that point in the game, it was too late for Raymond to really bounce back. But at the very end, Ogrepon just decided to just get a bunch of kills, mostly because I was playing it very, very, very passively and safe, but I really didn't need to.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I think
overall, it was pretty good.
yeah, yeah, I agree with you there. I think you were pretty hot out of the gate in this match. Toward the middle slash, maybe middle of the end of the game, Ray definitely mounted a comeback there, and right at the end, like you said, Ogrepon definitely tightened the gap up there. But yeah, I will say I don't really blame you for playing cautiously toward the end, just for the fact that when you're ahead, right? Um, Typically, if you're ahead, the big way that you could lose your lead is by making a reckless play, right? So I get your thought process that you didn't want to do anything reckless. Um, Sometimes what coaches do if they're ahead is they think like, oh, I'm going to preserve differential, or I'm going to get like a bigger differential or whatever, and they make like maybe a reckless play, and sometimes that comes back to cost them the entire game actually. So in my opinion, I think you're much better off going for a smaller, more guaranteed victory than trying to make unnecessary risks and trying to get like a bigger victory. That's just my opinion. Um, but yeah, all very good points. I think overall very solid game. Nonetheless, I know I've given Luminion a lot of crap here, but it was Terror Captain. It did do some stuff in this match. I will give it that much. And yeah, it was a good match all around. But um, I think I have to say this though. Definitely with this victory, I think you've definitely impressed a lot here in the BHDL4 so far. As I have to mention the fact that within the first 3 weeks of the season here, you've actually had to face both former champions in weeks 1 and 3, and actually defeated both of them. So my hat's off to you, my good man. You've done a hell of a job so far here, and very interested to see where you go moving forward in the league here.
Yeah, so am I. I'm obviously very happy with it too. And I've started off 3-0, which is perfect.
Yes, yes, can't wait to see what the rest of the league has in store. But yeah, that pretty well wraps this one. We're going to go ahead and move on to the next match here. And our next match is going to be the matchup of Stefan and his Grand Lake Garchomps taking on the team of Rolder and his Down Under Crocodiles. Now, if you've been following the captain's recaps, you might be thinking to yourself, wait a second, Rolder, I don't remember him. So Rolder is actually our replacement coach here. For the first time ever, this was a history making event here. The first time ever in the Battle Hub Draft League that a coach actually needed to be replaced and was replaced. And his replacement was none other than Rolder himself, former 2-time participant here in the BHDL. So solid, reliable coach all around. Brand new team, obviously, he was able to draft coming into the league, picking up for the coach that had to step out. So, but yeah, you can see Rolder drafted a pretty solid rain team here with a little bit or a lot of bit, depending on your definition of assistance or advice there. Put together one hell of a rain team, I think. So he got the Raging Bolt, the Pelipper, the Manaphy, of course the Clodsire, Basculegion, Rabombi, Terra Captains, Overquill, and Hitmonchan. So a lot of good stuff there on his side. Like I said, pretty solid Rain Core on that team. Definitely going to be a tough one for a lot of teams to get over. And yeah, his opponent, of course, Stefan, got some very solid threats on his side as well with the Garchomp, the Hisuian Samurott. He's got the Rillaboom and Hawlucha. Of course, Terrain Unburdened combo. Of course, I know a little something about that from BHDL Season
Mm.
1. Um, but yeah, he's also got Skeledirge, he's got Terra Captain Tauros and Diancie, Munkadori as well. Team has made quite a few changes. I believe it was after last week's game that he popped all his seasonal transactions in one shot and basically changed like half his team. So quite a different team on hand here for him this week. But when I look at this matchup on paper, I feel like Rolder does have a little bit of the advantage here because I feel like the Rain Core matches up relatively well against Stefan's team. He does have stuff like the Rillaboom or the if he goes Terra Water on the Diancie, but even then, stuff like the Raging Bolt is pretty good against that. Um, but yeah, what do you make of this matchup on paper?
That is, I was thinking the same thing. So if you look at Stefan's team, he has a water weakness on his entire draft against a rain team. So right there, that by itself is already very dangerous for Stefan going in. So he has to work around that. With that being said, I agree. Terra Water Diancie is it would be very powerful going in. I have gone into a match against a rain team with the Terra Water Diancie, and I actually led with Diancie, and it just swept the entire opponent's team without even doing with just standing up.
Oh wow,
So like Diamond Storm and Calm Mind, very impressive on Diancie. You got to keep in mind it is just as bulky as Toxapex. Diancie is very bulky, and
yes,
if it starts setting up, it can get really out of control. So Diancie was Stefan's way out, I think, as well as Halucha. Because if you look at Rolder's team, he has a decent flying weakness, and if Halucha gets the Unburden boost with a Swords Dance, it's very hard to kind of stop it. The only really way to stop it was Raging Bolt can always Thunderclap it unless Halucha like substitutes or something, and Rotom Mo would have to be weakened before Halucha can do its thing. But
fair enough.
overall, I think Rolder had the edge with his overwhelming rain team.
Yeah, absolutely, I agree. So in fact, when we take a look at these match results here, we will see that it was in fact Rolder that did get the win in this match. 2-0, relatively tight game. However, Rolder does take the win. Unfortunately, we do not have a game for or a recording for this match, so we don't exactly know how everything went down here. But we do know that the Raging Bolt went nuts here. I think took out half of the opposing team. So Raging Bolt put a lot of work in this game. But yeah, looking at the numbers, that's pretty much all I can discern from the actual numbers of this game. Because, like I said, we don't have a recording, so don't have too much to say about the actual game itself. But yeah, any thoughts you'd like to add?
I do have. There's one. I know. I only know of one turn that happened in this game because it was discussed in the chat post game.
All right,
There was one turn where Garchomp was facing Hitmonchan, and Hitmonchan is a Terra Captain, and it can have either Fairy or Steel or Fighting, I think. But
right.
and Stefan predicted it to be Terra Fairy and used Poison Jab on the Hitmonchan, which would have been a great play if it was Terra Fairy. But it ended up actually terrestrializing into a Steel type in front of
Mm,
Garchomp, which is very gutsy, and
absolutely.
it was immune to the Poison Jab, and I'm assuming it Ice Punched Garchomp because it one shot it in return. And according to the chat, that was the big turning point of the game, according
Interesting.
to what from what I can tell.
All right. Very interesting. Well, thank you for doing that digging and covering that information. That's pretty cool. Cool to know. Yeah, that's if that was what Rolder was predicting and that's how it worked out, then all the credit in the world to him because that's a hell of a play. Um, but
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
hell of a play. Um, but yeah, I think that's pretty much all I got to say about this one. So we will go ahead and move on to our next game, and that is going to be Silver and the Legends of Lapras taking on Biridu and his ABCDEFG Atacama Tyrannitars. So, when I look at this matchup on paper, I see on Silver's side with the Legends of Lapras, he's made some transactions to change his team around as well. But he's got stuff like the Iron Valiant, the Gastrodon, the Hisuian Gudra. He added a little bit of a Sun Core there with the Walking Wake and the Torkoal. He's got Terra Captain Umbreon and Terra Captain Lapras. as well. He's got that big Landorus Therian at the end. Got to shout out Joey Fontaine for that one, of course. So yeah, nice.
Hmm.
Everybody's favorite infamous YouTuber, PokeTuber, Joey Fontaine. Um, so,
Yeah.
but yeah, no comment. All right. So then we have then we have on the other side, of course, Beardew's team, very solid looking as well. He's got the Iron Treads, the Chi Yu, the Ogre Pond Wellspring, the Salamence, and the Azumarill. Just a lot of power on there. He's of course has the Terra Captains, Kilowattrel, and Muck. And of course the Yuxi great utility as well. Hatterene is great utility too. So very very solid squad all around there on Biridou's side as well. When I look at this matchup on paper, I feel like this is pretty even actually because you've got Iron Valiant versus Iron Treads. Depending on who has the switch advantage or the speed advantage, one could take the other out. You've got that little bit of the Sun Core on Silver's team could be problematic for Biridou with his Ogre Pond Wellspring and the Azumarill. But then again, of course, stuff like the Kilowattrel could go wild potentially. But yeah, I do think this is actually a pretty even matchup on paper here. What do you think?
I I agree. It's pretty even, but I was thinking maybe there was a slight tilt for Beardew's side because I was looking at Terra Ice Kilowattrel,
Yeah.
and once Hisuian Gudra takes enough, like chip, that Kilowattrel really can't be stopped. Landorus can come in, obviously, and block the electric type moves, but it won't take an ice type move unless it's Yachi Berry. And B, if it intimidates Kilowattrel, it will give it a competitive boost, which will double its special attack, which is very dangerous, especially like Terra Ice Kilowattrel is very strong. Uh,
Yes.
but Hisuian Gudra will ignore that Kilowattrel until it's chipped. It will. So that's why it's only a slight edge. If Gudra wasn't there, that Kilowattrel would be completely free. But that's the only thing. That's really the only thing. Everything else looked pretty even to me as well.
All right. Fair enough. So, when we take a look at the match results for this one, we will see that it was in fact Biridou that got the win in this one 4-0, a pretty big 4-0 victory in his favor actually. Um, so I watched this game, and I really this was one of those games that it felt like Biridou controlled pretty much the entire game from where I sat. It felt like there was never really a moment in the game where it seemed like Biridou was in like serious trouble, if you know what I mean. So it seems like he played his game well. He did what he wanted to do to get the advantage. The Iron Treads put in a lot of work here. I think it took out more than half of the team actually on the opposing side, and that was mainly just because of opportunistic kills combined with a really solid move set on the Iron Treads that Biridou brought. Just allowed it to kind of opportunistically pick things off. But yeah, what did you think of this matchup?
I thought it was pretty good. Uh, the Iron Treads it was able to do its stuff. Umbreon terrestrialized into a poison type, obviously giving it a ground type weakness.
Yep.
And once that happened, there was really nothing standing in Iron Tread's way, except for maybe Landorus. But I think the big misplay about later mid to late game was um, switching in Landorus on the Kilowattrel, because like I just said, he gave him a competitive boost, and it allowed Landorus to get two shot by the Kilowattrel from full, and he just kind of sacked Landorus for not really any reason, even though he still had a very healthy Hisuian Gudra in the back, which could have been able to handle that Kilowattrel much better. So that was the only kind of serious misplay I thought that was in the game. Everything else was pretty good. Toxic Spikes did its role very well against Silver. They poisoned an Umbreon. Even in my opinion, if you terrestrialize into a poison type, you should cure your poison, perhaps, but that is not the case. And Umbreon stayed poisoned. Thankfully, because it terrestrialized, it was able to get rid of the toxic spikes, but it could not save them from itself. and it was just a little too overwhelming for Silver to handle both Kilowattrel and Iron Treads.
Yeah, absolutely. I good points. I agree with you completely. I think this game definitely did display the value of hazards. I mean, not that we don't already know that already, but there's certain games where hazards certainly play more of a factor or less of a factor. But hazards were definitely good. Biridu, like I said, I think Biridu played better in this game, and he definitely had a better game plan coming in. He was able to execute that game plan, which, like I said, just kind of led me to feel like Beardo felt like he was in control pretty much the whole game here. Um, but yeah, very solid win, strong showing for Beardo in this one for sure. So,
Absolutely.
but yeah, having said that, we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next one. And our next one to look at is going to be Brandon and his Piedmont Triad Kickers taking on our current reigning BHDL champion, Anastasia, and Team Aquamarine. So, when I look at this matchup on paper, obviously you've got on Brandon's side, you've got a lot of power. You've got stuff like the Urshifu Rapid Strike, the Cinderace. Um, Whimsicott's very versatile. He's got the Archaludon, which is very bulky and very powerful. He has also got the Thunderous Incarnate, multiple prankster users, which of course is pretty nice. Actually, I just realized that this team is actually very reminiscent of a Ray's team from last season with those three Pokemon there. I didn't even realize that until right now, but kind of making that realization. But yeah, he's also got the Forretress is solid, Terra Captain, Flygon, and the Alolan Muck very solid as well. Looking at Anna's side, of course, she's got the Big Bad Dragapult, one of the premier Pokemon here in Gen 9. She's got the Primarina, the Corviknight, the Ogerpon Hearthflame, all very solid stuff there. Incineroar, Terra Captains, Galarian Articuno, and Bellibolt as well. Can't forget about the Toad Scroll. So yeah, I feel like when I look at this matchup on paper, once again, I kind of feel like this is a relatively even matchup on paper. I feel like Anna might have a little bit of an advantage though, because Dragapult, obviously being Dragapult, it outspeeds everything. Um, I feel like some of Anna's threats match up pretty well against Brandon's defensive core. So I'd probably give a little bit of an edge to Anna in this one. Um, but what do you think about this one?
When I looked at the matchup the other day, I actually didn't really see any obvious advantages. I mean, obviously Dragapult is extremely good, but she paid the points for it. I thought it was pretty even on paper, I
Fair
think.
enough.
I didn't really see anything too crazy.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, when we look at the actual game results for this one, we will in fact see that it was Anastasia that took the win in this one 1-0. Very, very tight victory on her side. 1-0. I did watch this game, and so the first thing I want to say about this game is I feel like Anna played particularly well in this game. She's usually on her game, but I think she was especially on her game in this one. She had very, very creative sets in this game, like the turn one in this game. If you recall, with the choice scarf Toad Scroll, trying to catch the Cinderace, trying to one shot it, which actually would have worked, I believe, if not for the fact that Cinderace was a Salt Vest, which was crazy to see to me. But I'm not sure if what kind of bulk investment it might have had as well. But I believe it was a Salt Vest, probably some bulk investment. But that actually allowed the Cinderace to live in Earth Power, because otherwise that would have been a hell of a turn one for Anna, one-shotting the Cinderace with a Choice Scarf Toad Scroll. So very, very creative sets on Anna's side. Her Dragapult set was insane. I don't know where she gets this stuff from, to be honest with you, but the Dragapult set was crazy. I think it was Curse, Shadow Force, Protect, and I can't remember the other one, but yeah, and Disable or something like that, I think. But it was a
Yeah,
wild,
it
wild,
was stable.
wild move set on that Dragapult. Um, but the other thing that I will say about this game is, unfortunately for Brandon, he got haxed hard in this game. And I feel like this might have been recompense for Anna getting hacked so badly in her game last week, that she would get some hacks back on her side this time. But Brandon unfortunately could not catch a break in this one. He had I believe multiple Thunder Wave misses on his side when he went for it. He had a lot of full paras after his Pokemon had been paralyzed with Thunder Wave, I believe. So yeah, definitely. Bottom line is, if you're Brandon, stay away from Thunderwave from here on out. I think that's the moral of the story. But yeah, what did you make of this game?
I thought it was pretty cool to see a lot of very unique items brought on things like you mentioned. The turn one, both of those items, both Assault Vest Cinderace and Choice Scarf Toad Scroll, are very rare. You never see those, so that was a very rare exchange. Very cool turn one. Dragapult was very creative. I really like the set. Now, what I kind of thought was, from looking at Brandon's point of view, he had an Archaludon at about, I'm going to say, roughly 60% health, and Dragapult came in. Now, in my head, when that came in, I was thinking, okay, there's 100% a Draco Meteor coming right now because there's no way Shadow Ball is enough to take it out. And so I was really thinking she was going to Draco Meteor. So I was kind of like, I was screaming at
The
at the
screen.
screen to go back into Whimsicott. I was thinking, okay, go Whimsicott here. There has to be Draco Meteor because she can't Shadow Ball and risk, Archaludon just Dragon Pulsing Dragapult in return.
Of course.
But what she didn't have Draco Meteor. Instead, she had Phantom Force, and you said the whole set already. It was really cool. She was able to disable the Archaludon and just take it out. I think Dragapult one-on-one to Archaludon unscathed, I'm pretty sure. Or maybe it switched out. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure Archaludon died in that
it did.
exchange there.
It succumbed to curse
And
damage
then,
eventually, I believe.
right, yes, and Curse, yeah. Right, so I guess Dragapult wasn't unscathed because it,
Yeah,
it took the Curse recoil, but
but
still.
she also had, I believe, leftovers on the Dragapult too, so it was able to kind of keep it a little healthier. But speaking of that specific exchange, yeah, I definitely feel like Brandon did not play as good as he could have in this game, because I feel like, to me, when I'm trapped in curse, like, the first thing I'm thinking is like, okay, I gotta switch out, because, like, then you can reset the
Yeah.
curse and you don't get. So I think him staying in for as long as he did was a tactical error on his side. And I think there were some other things throughout the course of this match that I was watching. Like I said, I think Anna played really well, and I don't think Brandon played poorly, but I think Anna definitely played better, and that uh, showed, I think, in the game results. But like I said, those the I think Brandon's thought process, again, with that, the Dragapult versus Archaludon moment. Um, he was just hoping and crossing his fingers, like, just, hoping that he could get a turn where he wasn't full parrot, and, like, and it's like in every other turn, because of Phantom Force, obviously, makes it so you're not going
Yeah.
to hit it every other turn. And then those full paras were
That-
just devastating full paras at the worst possible time for Brandon. Um, so yeah, this game was definitely heavily hacks influenced. But like I said, I think Anna played very well. Brandon probably could have played a little better for sure. But yeah, very solid game all around. A very entertaining game, like you said, like I said, just a lot of creative stuff that you don't see very often in this one. So you love to see it, of course. That's kind of one of the big pluses of Draft League, I think, is you get to see a lot of creative stuff that you wouldn't otherwise see. But um,
yeah. One more thing,
yeah,
just quickly to add. I think just another thing I'd kind of disagreed with. I think Brandon at some point sacked Whimsicott just on a switch, and
yeah.
Whimsicott was Scarf, so it was definitely able to take care of the Dragapult at any point in the game.
Yeah. I think that was I think that was a little bit of a tactical error. The thing that I've noticed recently, watching some of Brandon's games recently, because he's in other leagues as well. He really loves that Cinderace. Like, he really loves Cinderace, and he's willing to put, like, all of his eggs in the Cinderace basket, pun intended. Um, he's willing to do that, whether it's a good idea or not. He's willing to do that. So I give him credit for being true to his favorite Pokemon, I guess. Um, but yeah, definitely
Absolutely.
not always the most tactically advantageous thing to do. So, But yeah, so moving on from this one, that is going to bring us into our next match, which is actually going to be my match, as I, of course, lead the Philadelphia Pidgeys into battle versus the notorious HIM and his Brooklyn Baxcaliburs. So, obviously, on my side of the aisle here, we've got. Of course, the mirror dimension version of my season 3 team last season. So you've got the Sneasler, the Terror Captain Gudra, the Scissor, the Rotom Wash, and Mudsdale defensive core, very potent, I've found. We've got the Indeedee for terrain setting. We've got the Hisuian Arcanine and the Azelf as well. So I think a lot of solid stuff, of course. And then on HIM's side, he's got, of course, the Baxcalibur and Galarian Slowking, very devastating combo. Of course, the chilly reception into Baxcalibur, the reason that it got banned from OU largely. But then he's also got the Excadrill and the Garganackle. He's got as I've stated many times, and I'll continue to state, probably the best Terra Captain loadout of any coach in this league, with the Typhlosion, the Quagsire, and the Dockspun, all Terra Captains. And then, of course, he's got the Thunderous Therian, and you can't sleep on the Blastoise, very potent Shell Smasher or utility with or without Terra. So when I look at this matchup on paper, I'll give you, since this is my game, I'll give you a little bit of insight into, what I was thinking going into this match. Um, so when I looked at his team, I was thinking, okay, Sneasler could go nuts here. Sneasler could go absolutely nuts on his team if not for one thing and one thing only, and that is that
Quagsire.
damn Terra Poison unaware Quagsire. And and I was looking at it. I was just looking at this thing, and I'm like, I can swords dance as many times as I want. It's not going to matter. I'm doing like 25% of this thing at best, like 30% at best, with any attack on from Sneasler to Quagsire. Like, there's just no way that I can get over this Terra Poison Quagsire, right? That was my thought process, because I was primed and ready to bring the unburdened Sneasler, and I was thinking, like, if I get an unburdened SD up on Sneasler, like, what is he gonna do? Like, there's just about nothing he can do to stop me if I get through that. Nothing's gonna outspeed me. Pretty much his only priority on this team is Ice Shard Baxcalibur, I believe. Um, so yeah, and if the psychic terrain's still up, it blocks priority. So I was really just thinking that, and then I'm looking at the Quagsire, and I'm just like, there's no way he's gonna let me chip the Quagsire enough that it's gonna be below like 30% that I can take it out with it. So I chose not to bring the unburdened Sneasler this week, specifically for the fact that this Terra Poison Quagsire, like, in my mind, there is a 100% chance that Terra Poison Quagsire is showing up to this game, and he doesn't bring it. I'm like, as soon as I looked at the team preview, I was like, what the hell? Like, what the actual hell? Like, so I let me just say, I didn't bring Unburdened Sneasler, and I didn't bring Rotom Wash specifically because Quagsire would do so much work, and he doesn't even bring it. So that was the biggest thing, I think, for me in this game. But honestly, other than that, I felt like I had a pretty good matchup on paper here. But what's your thoughts about this matchup on paper?
Yeah, I don't think I clarified in this video, but I looked at all these matches before the matchups before I actually watched the video. So before I watched yours, I was like looking at both Baxcalibur and Sneasler. I agree, Sneasler went very hard into your opponent's team, and I actually thought that Baxcalibur, if it got a Dragon Dance up, I didn't. It was going to be very good against your team. So
Yep.
both of your aces were very strong against each other, and it was just basically which one of them can unleash first is what I was really thinking this was going to come down to. And Excalibur did not get a chance in this game. I think it just it earthquaked Caesar, and then I got close combated and bullet punched and got taken out. So Excalibur did not get its chance. Sneasler didn't actually do too much though, did it? I think it brought down a poison Blastoise early, which is very powerful.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah, that's pretty
I'm
much it.
sorry, I'm spoiling things, aren't I?
That's
We're not
okay.
that far, are we?
Let's go ahead and get us that far. So, if we take a look at the match results, actually, we will find out that it was in
Sorry,
fact my. No, you're good.
I'm sorry.
We're good. We're good. Um, we will find out that it was in fact me who. Well, I'm assuming that anyone who's watching this has probably already watched my game, so they probably already know the match results. So so it's
That
all
yeah,
good.
that's.
But
I'm sorry.
no, you're good. And there wasn't too much else. I don't think there was anything else to say about it on paper. But yeah, obviously
I
you
have
can.
two more
Yeah, oh, sorry. Go ahead.
actually.
Take it
I
away.
thought uh Typhlosion I actually thought was pretty decent against you
Okay.
because I don't know if you know this, but Typhlosion its attack is 84 and it does have play rough. So
Yes.
although your Gudra can stand in its way, play rough will hurt Gudra a lot. And Terra Grass plus fire I thought was pretty good against you with Typhlosion, and he did bring the Typhlosion, so I was happy to see it. I don't know if it had the play rough. I actually I DM'd HIM and I said, "Hey, you should bring play rough on Typhlosion. I think that'd be cool." Like not trying to betray you, but I just saw
It sounds like a
Typhlosion.
betrayal to
Typhlosion's
me.
one of my favorites.
It sounds like a betrayal to me. I'm sorry, I gotta say. Yeah, I mean, it very well could have been a physical Typhlosion. I don't know. I didn't get his sets. But fair points.
Yeah,
Fair
all I
points.
saw was Terra Blast on it, really. And
Yep.
then on your side, Drift Blim hit across HIM's entire team. His only resistance to Ghost was Garganical. Everything else did neutral. So I knew Flare Boost Drift Blim was also going to be pretty good, but unfortunately, it just had to die to a Thunderous.
Yep. Yeah. So with me taking the win 3-0 in this game, as you mentioned, there were a lot of big moments in this match. Um, the team that he brought. The first thing I want to say about this match is, aside from the fact that I think it was a really solid match, um, I think that, as we kind of mentioned, I feel like on his side, he brought some stuff that I definitely wasn't expecting. Like, I didn't expect him to bring the Typhlosion, quite honestly. I was very surprised not to see the Quagsire and the Excadrill too. I thought Excadrill would show up to this match, like Scarf Excadrill. Um, but I was very, 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 very surprised. I can't say very enough times because I really am very surprised that there was no Quagsire. I was in disbelief when I did not see it Quagsire, because I was, like I said, I was 100% sure there was going to be a Terra Poison Quagsire coming to this match,
Yeah.
um, which was the only reason that I brought Banded Sneasler instead of Unburdened Sneasler this week. But as well, I will say with this game, it definitely felt like it was a power struggle for most of this game. You know, from my perspective, I think that in the early going of the match, he definitely had me on the back foot. We were trying to kind of struggle for a position. But I feel like toward the middle and the end of the game, obviously, I took it over. The Thunderous was a real problem. It put in a lot of work on his side. And I knew when I was deciding what Terra type to bring for my Gudra, I knew that bringing Terra Water Gudra was going to be a big risk, because I knew it was going to open me up to Thunderous. But I was kind of hoping that I could hold the Terra long enough to deal with the Thunderous and then kind of move on from that. But unfortunately, that was not the case, which kind of led to Thunderous putting in a lot of work on his side. But additionally, Scissor actually put a lot of work in on my side, which I was very happy about. It went pretty hard against his team, because the one thing is, while he was getting a lot of early knockouts against my team, I was chipping a lot of his team. Like the Thunderous was very chipped. The Garganackle was very chipped very early. And Bax Caliber obviously gets two shot by Bullet Punch. So I was happy with positioning myself, either intentionally or unintentionally at some points, to where Scissor could actually potentially be a late game cleaner. So I was really happy with how that turned out, obviously. I will say I was happy with Choice Scarf Hisuian Arcanine. That was able to kind of catch the Typhlosion, and even though it didn't one-shot it, it was able to actually tank a Terra Blast Grass from the Typhlosion and then finish it off with another Head Smash. Um, so I was pretty happy about that, as that was the first outing ever for me with Hisuian Arcanine. So I was pretty happy about that. But yeah, you already kind of gave most of your thoughts on the match as well. Also, Driftbloom was kind of a disappointment, unfortunately. I will say that as well. I was really like, as you said, one of the biggest criticisms I had of HIM's team when we did the power rankings, and one that he hadn't really addressed, was that his team was very weak to Ghost and Rock, which is the reason that I brought both the Flare Boost Driftflim and the Hisuian Arcanine, because I felt like they could both go really hard against his team. And like we said, unfortunately, Driftbloom didn't really get to do anything. It got taken out. It was a good prediction on his side to pivot into the Thunderous and then get rid of it before it could do anything. Um, but yeah, so that's pretty much all I have to say about it. I was very happy to take the win in this one. Very hard fought game. But like I said, toward the end of the match, for me, it felt like everything kind of came together. But did you have anything else you wanted to say about the game aside from what you've already said?
Yeah, I do.
All right,
I
shoot.
I got to give you props. There was a very good play around early mid game, I think, where you predicted Thunderous to come in and you hit it with a Draco Meteor, even though you're at -2, to really weaken it, definitely put it in any priority range, bullet punch range. I
Yep.
think that was a big turning point because at that point, that Thunderous was ready to do a lot of damage, and making sure that it was almost dead like that, forcing Blastoise to Rapid Spin later in the game as well, because if Stealth Rock's on the field, Thunderous goes away. So I think that was a very good play. Nice work.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I think your opponent kind of underestimated Caesar a little, because I think across their entire team, the only thing that had a fire move was Typhlosion, and obviously it's going to have a fire move. I'm assuming it had a fire move anyway,
I would
but
think.
I don't think he had a fire move in his entire team, and I think he very much so underestimated Caesar, and it showed. It really just plowed through his team, unfortunately.
Yes. Well, fortunately or unfortunately, depending on your perspective, but I would argue
Yeah,
I would argue fortunately,
unfortunately.
but um,
Yes, yes.
yes. But yeah, fair points. Definitely fair points. Yeah, and a solid match there once again. So. But yeah, moving on from this one, that is going to go ahead and bring us to the next game, which is going to be, speaking of Typhlosion, we have Discord's Rising Star Cobra and his two cool Typhlosions taking on Heal Emerald slash Emerald Miner and his Demolition Force. So, when I look at this matchup on paper, on Cobra's side, he's got obviously a lot of solid stuff. The Roaring Moon, the Goldango, the Galarian Wheezing, um, of course the Terra Captains, the Dunsparce and Hisuian Typhlosion. Um, and yeah, he's also got the Iron Hands, a lot of good stuff. On Emerald's side, of course, he's got the Greninja, the Annihilate, the Metagross, a lot of bulky offense. He's got the Terra Captain Bramblegast, very interesting. The Moltres, the Dragalge, Sandy Shocks, and then he's got that Terra Captain Lycanroc that's midday form as well. So, and then the Enamorus, we can't forget about that. So, yeah, looking at this matchup on paper, I feel like it's hard to say, right? Because I think this is actually a pretty even match on paper because I feel like both of them have a lot of solid answers into pretty much everything that the other one has on their team. Like you have Greninja could take out Goldango potentially. It could take out Typhlosion. Could take out obviously Amoonguss with Ice or Gligar. Um, Espeon as well. But then, Annihilate also could be very good against Roaring Moon. It could be good against Goldango. Could be good against Typhlosion. But then conversely, Typhlosion could be good against, Metagross, against Annihilate. Um, Roaring Moon could be good against Metagross. It could be good against the Bramblegast. So I just feel like there's a lot of Pokemon that match up very well on both sides on this one. So I think it's pretty even. But what do you think?
I'm gonna give the edge to Cobra actually
Okay.
for this matchup. I thought his Typhlosion was pretty good against Emerald Miner's team. I thought Infernal Parade was a fairly spammable move because it does have I think a 30% burn chance, just like Scald.
Yep.
And I thought that was pretty good, which means it kind of gave it the edge against Annihilate. Because if it's Annihilate versus Typhlosion, obviously Ghost on Ghost. But if Typhlosion gets that burn, Annihilate's not going to like it. Uh, so Typhlosion was going to go in, and actually, Segment Steve, do Dunsparce, I thought was very good defensively because I knew going in, like I said, I looked at the matchup before watching the video. I knew Dunsparce can handle pretty much anything Greninja can do. The only thing maybe is Dunsparce would be forced to run especially defensive, and if Greninja was like maximally physically offensive with like Gunk Shot, probably can take out Dunsparce. But I thought Segment Steve was very good defensively in this one. However, Emerald Miner's Annihilate, Cobra did not have a switch into it, really. His only two ghost switch ins are to Dunsparce and Roaring Moon, and both of those guys are weak to fighting. So Annihilate was really ready to do a lot of damage in this one. And however, the Gligar can, with Eviolite, can ignore Annihilate. It can do a very good job at ignoring Annihilate. Can't really hurt it too much in return, but it can tank the hits. So I felt as though Cobra actually had a edge in this one.
All right, fair enough. So, when we take a look at the actual match results here, we are going to see that it was, in fact, Cobra that took the win in this one 2-0. Pretty tight game, pretty competitive game. So, the biggest things that stand up out to me about this game, first and foremost, I have to say it. Y'all know what I'm thinking. Heal Emerald, of course, the persona of Emerald Miner when he decides to embrace the hacks instead of fighting it. See, it's always funny to me with Emerald because there's a rich, storied history of Emerald Miner and his well-timed hacks in his favor. Of course, on full display last week in last week's game, but in seasons past as well. But of course, I love Emerald Miner as a showman. That's one of the things I like about him. Is he's about the entertainment value. He's about the showmanship, and I appreciate that because I am also of course, about the entertainment value and the showmanship. So he brings the heel Emerald persona to the battle. So that's definitely the highlight for me. But also, I felt like, as far as the actual game was concerned, the Annihilate did put in work. Like you said, there's not really a switch in on Cobra's team to Annihilate, and that really showed. Unfortunately, it would get worn out, but unfortunately for Emerald, I should say it would get worn out. But I think the big story also is the Scarf Goldango did so much work to Emerald's team. I think it took out like half his team. I want to say, if not more. Um, so yeah,
I
just
think he got 4 KO.
yep. So over half the team. Yeah. So I think Cobra definitely did his homework in this game, and he definitely came to play, I would say, and he got it done. So I give him credit for that because Emerald Miner, very very seasoned competitive battler and draft leaguer, very very good record here in the BHDL as a whole. He's made playoffs every single season. But yeah, definitely props to Cobra for bringing what he had to bring to get the win there. But what did you make of this game?
Well, first of all, sad to see Typhlosion did not make the game, did not make its appearance.
Unfortunately.
Um, yeah. Moltres, I really like Moltres. Unfortunately, it uh a late game, what really let the Goldango go wild was I feel like I kind of think Emerald Miner kind of misplayed around it a little bit.
Yeah.
He went late game. He went into an Enamorus, which was Toy Scarf, and he predicted his opponent Cobra to switch. Now, which was fine, but I thought it was a little risky because if Goldango does stay in like it did, it is game over. I think the Earth Power was kind of necessary, and also Cobra did not know that Enamorus was Scarf at that point, so it was still concealed. So I think that was the big final nail in the coffin. Now, I have to obviously point out the hacks in this game existed, and sometimes they were devastating, sometimes they did nothing. Like, I think it was turn two, Greninja went for an Ice Beam, and it got a critical hit and a freeze on poor old Segment Steve, the Dunsparce,
Yep. Yes,
which
indeed.
was early game, and I'm sure everyone who was
Devastating.
watching it was going, "Oh boy, here we go again." Just like last week, it's time for the hacks to completely take over. Now, thankfully, immediately, Segment Steve thought out was able to roost off the critical hit damage and basically ignore that hacks.
Yeah.
However, later in the game, well, sorry, Goldango was in,
Hmm.
and Emerald brought in Lycanroc. Now, this was probably the most devastating thing in this entire game. Uh, Goldango stays in, goes for a Thunderbolt, gets the 10% paralysis chance, and then Lycanroc gets the 25% full para and does not go for the crunch that would have taken out the Goldango to prevent it from getting an additional 3 kills.
Yes.
That was a big, big moment, and unfortunately, the healness just turned its back and struck Emerald in the spine and twisted the blade.
Yeah,
It was
unfortunately the hacks gods came for their revenge on Heel Emerald this week. Unfortunately for him, yes, I agree with you. I think those were probably the two biggest turning points in the match, in my opinion. Was that, like you said, the para into a full para on the Lycanroc, which is worst case scenario for Emerald, obviously. But of course, the mispredict with the Goldango and the Enamorus was big, huge as well. Um, but yeah, unfortunately, that's what we see in these games. I mean, that is the game of Pokemon at the end of the day, right? It's there are hacks, they do happen, and sometimes you're on the good end of it, sometimes you're on the bad end of it, and yeah, that's unfortunately that is the game we play, right?
yeah, and not taking anything away from Cobra though. He still played this game pretty well. Pretty
Yep,
pretty pretty well.
I would agree with that. So, but yeah, moving on to our next one here, that is going to bring us to the matchup of Arcaniner and his West Texas Arcanines taking on Scorpion and his Leaf Agents. So, when I look at this matchup on paper here, obviously you've got Arcaniner, and he's got pretty solid stuff. Obviously, he's got the Latias, he's got the Weavile, he's got the Donphan and the Entei, Terra Captains, Inteleon, and Electros. And then, of course, he's got Gengar, Lucario. Pretty solid stuff, obviously. Pretty rounded, solid team all around there. Looking at Scorpion's team, of course, he's got the Palafin, Zapdos, and Ting Lu. Very solid stuff. The Cyclizar, a lot of utility there. Then, of course, the Delphox and Primeape as Terra Captains. Of course, the X Factor and the Mimikyu as well. And the Klefki, a lot of utility in that. So, um, when I look at this matchup on paper, I kind of feel like Scorpion has the edge here, just due to the fact that I feel like there's not a lot on Arcaniner's team that answers Palafin very well. I guess Latias, but it's not, going to appreciate an Ice Punch very much. I guess Superior, but again, that's not going to appreciate an Ice Punch very much. So yeah, I feel like Palafin could definitely have been poised to do big damage in this match. Um, but yeah, what did you think about this matchup on paper? I also thought that Terra Captain Delphox definitely looked really good versus Arcaniner's team as well. But what did you make of this?
Looking at this matchup, I agree. Palafin did not really have an answer. Now, granted, there isn't really any one good answer to Palafin. Maybe Quagsire, but
Yeah,
even then, it's not really. Palafin is just a devastating force. Now, an Arcaniner's team, he has a lot of guys that are really fast and hit really hard, but none of them want to take a jet punch. Inteleon can take a jet punch, but if it terrestrializes out of water, it doesn't want to anymore. So I thought specifically jet punch was a very good move into Arcaniner's team with all his frail, hard hitting guys. With that being said, I thought Terra Electric Inteleon actually was pretty good into Scorpion's game because the only things that want to take a water type move, I think, are Palafin and Cyclizar. Palafin doesn't want the electric type moves, and Cyclizar is not the bulkiest thing. It does like to run Assault Vest, but it won't really like the Ice Beam, even if it's not. Terra Ice. So I
Yep.
thought Inteleon was pretty good into Scorpion's team, and Weavile as well. I thought Ice and Dark went pretty hard into his team, but it had to stay healthy to make sure that Jet Punch just didn't wipe it off the field. Uh, so overall, because of that, Palafin was just so overwhelming with Jet Punch. I'm gonna give the edge to Scorpion in
Yep.
this game.
Yep. I think it's like you said. It was just a question as far as Arcaniner was concerned. I think it was a question of trying to keep everything healthy enough that it won't die to a jet punch, and that's way easier said than done. Um,
Yes, absolutely.
but yeah, when we take a look at the actual match results here, we will find out that it was in fact actually Arcaniner, despite those disadvantages, that took the win in this match 1-0. I thought that this was a good game. I thought both coaches prepped and played pretty well in this match, although I would say I think Scorpion probably prepped a little bit better and played a little bit better than Arcaniner did. Um, but I think the biggest takeaway from this game that I have is my God, the hacks once again. I think Scorpion got hacked pretty hard in this match. Not gonna lie, he had a lot of misses. I think he missed Will-O-Wisp like 2 turns in a row against Donphan, which was just absolutely devastating
Yep.
because it let Donphan keep the sturdy. And yeah, I know there were a few other hacks, though I'm struggling to remember the specifics. But I know prior to that, there were more. There were like I know Scorpion was missing a lot of like 85, 90% accuracy moves
He
against
missed
the
a
Thunder
couple of
Wave.
ruinations.
Oh, he missed the Ruination. Did he miss a Thunder Wave too, or am I misremembering that? I don't know.
I think that's. I think Mimikyu's Thunder Wave was the only thing really that
Gotcha,
actually landed.
gotcha. So yeah, there was definitely a lot of hacks working against Scorpion in this game. Um, and yeah, the ones that really mattered were, like I said, those Will-O-Wisp misses against the Donphan were just absolutely devastating. Um, because that allowed the Donphan to keep it sturdy, which would end up being a huge difference maker. And at the end of this matchup, it all came down to like damage rolls, I believe. Now I'm not sure because I think the end game was a very weakened Palafin versus basically a full health Lucario. And as we all know, extreme speed out prioritizes Jet Punch. But unfortunately, I don't know if it was just a low roll on Scorpion's side or if maybe there was some bulk investment on the Lucario. But the Lucario was able to survive a Jet Punch and take Palafin out with 2 extreme speeds, one after the other, to actually get the victory for Arcaniner. So, but that entire situation would have never even arose if the Donphan sturdy hadn't stayed intact. That situation would never even come up. So yeah, definitely, I would not taking anything away from Arcaniner, of course, but I think that hacks definitely played a very critical role in the outcome of this match. But what say you?
I agree that the misses were very bad. They let Arcaniner get up Stealth Rocks for free as well as finish off Mimikyu. It was a very bad turning point. Now, I think because of Palafin's overwhelming pressure, I think Arcaniner kind of used his Latias a little early. Uh, Looking at Scorpion, actually, I think he did bring Ice Punch, but still being able, it was banded Palafin this week. So Latias, it came in early and it did its thing. It did do a lot of damage, but it maybe a defensive one to try to slow down Palafin, maybe. But as we saw, it didn't end up mattering. So those who watch the anime, they should know that Lucario will hang on and finish off the prey. Lucario always does that. Um,
Yes.
Obviously, a big thing. I didn't think it was going to survive. I also do not know how much HP Lucario had, if any, because looking at the matchup, Revavroom is 90 base speed and Lucario is 90 base speed. So if Lucario wants to speed tie with the Revavroom, it has to run max speed and then assuming max attack. So it wouldn't really have much room for HP. So it could have been a damage roll for Scorpion to win that game, which he unfortunately for him did not get. Now, Arcaniner made a very critical misplay late game with his Dawn Fan. He attempted to go for the Rapid Spin against an incoming Klefki. Now, if you use Rapid Spin and hit a Rocky Helmet, you will die, and if you die to the Rocky Helmet, you will not get rid of the hazards that are on
Yes.
your side of the field, which, in my opinion, is a really it's a silly mechanic because it's not like it's stopping you from spinning around. So, in my opinion, it shouldn't work that way,
But it
but
does.
it does work that way. So
Yeah.
Stealth Rocks are able to stay on the field, and I'm pretty sure I read in the spoiler chat, I think Lucario was actually Focus Sash, but
Okay.
because it took that little bit of Stealth
The
Rock
sash
chip,
was
because Dawn
deactivated.
Fan couldn't get rid of them,
Yep. The
it
sash was
couldn't use the
deactivated.
Focus Sash,
Right.
and but it ended up not mattering. It had its Focus Sash in its mind and just tanked the
Yes.
hit anyway.
Yes.
Uh,
It had a focus band. It turned into a focus band with that 1 in 20 chance. But
yeah, exactly.
no, yeah. So I will say that is all very true. I will say in Arcaniner's defense, I don't think he didn't know that the clef key was Rocky Helmet at that point. So it's kind of like,
Yeah,
yeah, like in
yeah,
hindsight,
I
yeah,
was
you're
thinking that.
absolutely right. You're in hindsight, you're absolutely right. Yeah. But I don't. He didn't know that the clef key was Rocky Helmet. I don't believe at that point. So, but so he was trying to get rid of the hazards. Now, had he made the more ballsy play and gone for Earthquake instead, that would have been a different, story entirely, of course. Um,
Yeah,
but yeah, it was. I will say, like I said, I think there were definitely a couple of little misplays on both players' sides. A couple of hindsight things. I do, like I said, I do think they both played pretty well. They both prepped pretty well. And in games like that, I've said it before and I'll say it again. It can come down to like a couple of hacks, maybe even one sometimes, that will throw a game one way or the other if it's that close. Um,
yeah.
um,
And yeah, you're absolutely right. He did not know it was Rocky Helmet. So yeah, it wasn't a. I shouldn't have said it was a bad play or a misplay. I was
well,
just saying
it's
it was
yeah, it's
maybe not.
hindsight.
It's the wrong play.
Yes,
It ended up being the wrong play. I'll say.
definitely, definitely, definitely. So, but yeah, having said that, we will move on to our last game to look at here for week 3, and that is going to be Lazy Boy and his Sleepy Laxingtons taking on Pokemaster 88 and his California Trailblazers. So, looking at this matchup on paper, we have on Lazy Boy's side, he's got stuff like the Darkrai, the Quacklevolt, the Pecharunt, and the Jirachi. Powerhouse Pokemon, bulky offense with some of those, and of course the Ursaluna Blood Moon. Um, He's also got, of course, Galvantula. He's got Terra Captain Mousehold. So solid stuff there. Screamtail's a lot of utility. And then, of course, on Pokemaster's side, he's got that mascot Meowscarada and Iron Moth, a lot of power. He's got the Skarmory and the Hitmontop and the Swampert bulk slash bulky offense for some of those. Terra Captain Hitmontop, of course, along with Terra Captain Alolan Raichu and the Florges. Great tank, obviously, and the Hydreigon, very, very good. And of course, the Pincurchin. We can't forget about Pincurchin, of course. Synergizes very well with the Iron Moth and the Alolan Raichu. So, um, looking at this matchup on paper, I kind of feel like Pokemaster has the edge in this match because I feel like Meowscarada does work to a lot of the team, takes out Quacklevolt, takes out Pecharunt, um, Ursaluna Blood Moon as well, and Jirachi actually too. So Meowscarada actually does a lot of work in this matchup. Hitmontop looks good. And then, of course, that electric terrain core, if he can get that going, definitely looks pretty good here. So yeah, I would think Pokemaster has the edge on paper here. But what do you make of this game?
I'm also giving the edge to Pokemaster. I thought Iron Moth was the big thing. You're right about Meowscarada, but I thought Iron Moth was even better because with an electric terrain boost, it'll outspeed everything. And the only fire resistance, I think, on Lazy Boy's team, there's Quacklevolt and Oricorio if Oricorio is the fire Oricorio.
And if it
Those
doesn't
are the
Terra,
only two things that really, yeah, and if it doesn't Terra.
yep,
Uh, Those are the only two things. So I thought that a fiery dance Iron Moth could easily get out of hand if it's especially if it's on the electric terrain. The good news is it's slightly slower than Screamtail, so if it's not on electric terrain or if it doesn't have booster uh, energy, Screamtail can Thunder Wave it and probably actually take a Sludge Wave in return. So Screamtail can kind of slow it down a little bit, maybe, but I thought Iron Moth was ready to go crazy in this one.
Yep, for
And
sure.
Florges. I think on Lazy Boy's team he has a lot of special attacking threats like the Darkrai and the Ursaluna Blood Moon and this and Oricorio. I thought Florges was especially defensive, very good in going into this game. And with Skarmory as well on Pokemaster's side, it forces the Jirachi to be sort of a mixed set because it has to run Iron Head to hit Florges if it wants to hit Florges, and it has to run Thunderbolt on the special side to hit Skarmory. So Jirachi kind of had to be mixed, or it and which would kind of force its EVs in certain places. So I gave the edge to Pokemaster, but Ursaluna Blood Moon is a devastating force. It can always rip through teams no matter what, pretty much. So it's never really safe against it, but I still gave the edge to Pokemaster in this one.
Fair enough. Fair enough. So, when we look at the match results for this one, we are going to see that it was, in fact, Pokemaster that did take the win in this one 4-0. So, a pretty big victory for Pokemaster. Um, so, I feel like this game, there were a bunch of things about this game. So, first and foremost, the first opening two turns of this game. So Pokemaster gets the lead right. He leads Hitmontop versus Lazy Boy's Darkrai, right? And so he goes for the fake out Mach Punch combo, and he already knows from damage calcs that that's going to be enough to kill the Darkrai, and for some reason Lazy Boy just lets it happen. I don't understand what was going on in these first opening couple of turns of this match. Like why, even if you granted he didn't know what the set was, and granted, maybe you can't assume there's going to be fake out because Hitmontop is not always going to be fake out, of course. But I feel like it was a huge tactical error very, very early on Lazy Boy's side to leave that Darkrai in against that Hitmontop. Maybe the turn one with the fake out, I could have been like, maybe. But even then, like, even if he wasn't afraid of the fake out, you should have been afraid of Mach Punch because I think if Hitmontop is like max attack choice band Mach Punch, I think that might even one shot Darkrai. So I feel like it was a huge tactical error on Lazy Boy's side very early that really cost him, the momentum, and arguably you could say later down the road because of that error and not basically he losing the Darkrai for no reason so early in the match. Really swung the momentum hard in Pokemaster's favor and made it very hard for Lazy Boy to try and climb back into it after that. And like I said, I didn't really see a good reason for it. You know what I mean? There were other options, like Jirachi or what have you. There were definitely other options than just letting Darkrai die for free. So that was huge. Um, but also that kind of feeds into a general feeling about this game that I had is that I did feel like Pokemaster was better prepared for this game and did play the game better than Lazy Boy did. Um, and that was just probably the biggest example of that. But additionally, this game saw, unfortunately for the viewers, not one but two Calm Mind wars between Florges and Ursaluna Blood Moon. I had to skip to the end of both of them because I was just like, I can't I can feel myself getting irritated watching this, so I just don't even want to watch this anymore because I've been in that situation before where you're just in a calm mind war and it's just like, okay, either whoever's good, somebody's gonna get a crit or somebody's gonna run out of recovery moves and that person's gonna lose, so I hate it so much. Like it's one of my least favorite things about this game is when you get in a situation like that, like a stally situation. So I thought that was awful, but it is what it is. And yeah, Florges definitely put in a lot of work. I think it took out about half the team, if not more, on Lazy Boy for Pokemaster against Lazy Boy. So Florges definitely did a lot of work in those Calm Mind wars, and having stored power was a huge difference maker because. Um, in a Calm Mind War, like hypothetically, you can get up to say, I think they were both at +6 in the first Calm Mind War. I don't know if they made it all the way back up to +6 in the second one. Um, but I know that in the first Calm Mind War they were at +6, and I know that the benefit for Pokemaster at that point, the fact that he had stored power on the floor, just meant that not only was stored power's attack strength sky high, but because it was counting the special attack increases were, obviously boosting its special attack, but because of the way stored power works, it's kind of like stored power doubled, the boosts because of getting the extra power for the special defense increases as well. So that's what allowed Pokemaster to outrun Ursaluna with the Florges and the Calm Mind War twice actually. And yeah, I feel like Lazy Boy, had he played it a little bit better, I think he could have gotten himself out of that situation, especially after the first one. Like, there was a point in the game toward the end where Lazy Boy had um, Quackleval in against, it might have been Florges, I don't remember. And I feel like if he would have just clicked Aqua Step, he would have got a KO, and then he would have been at +2 speed, +1 attack from the Moxie. And I feel like Quackleval might actually been able to get like a late game cleanup if he not, but he like double switched the Quackleval for some reason. So I feel like Quackleval could have been poised for a late game cleanup, but unfortunately that was not the case. But yeah, definitely a wild ride in this one. So what are your thoughts about that?
Okay. Definitely agree with the first interaction with Darkrai against him on top. That was very weird. I don't really know why Lazy Boy just let it die. It's like I think Darkrai is like 20 points or maybe 19 or something like that. It's definitely not something you just want to let die. I think all season I haven't really seen it do too much. I think it keeps dying instantly. I think against Beardo it died in one shot to a Fire Blast turn one too as well. So Darkrai is really not enjoying its time right now. And
Yeah, very true.
the what was I going to say? The Ursaluna could have really benefited from having a physical move on a set. I was really kind of expecting it to. I think it learns Iron Head. I'm pretty sure it could have definitely benefited from having Iron Head just to hit the floor. Just because looking at Pokemaster's team, he's going to try to stop Ursaluna with Florges. That is going to happen. There is no question. So maybe it could have benefited from having Iron Head on its set. It didn't. I personally watched every single minute of that match, so a lot of calm minding stuff.
Yep.
Every single calm mind, it just rises the tension because every single attack at that point you're just gonna assume it's a critical hit just to ruin someone's day, make them angry.
Yep.
Uh, Thankfully, it did not end in a critical hit, and it was beneficial. And yes, the stored power, absolutely. I think at +6, it's like 260 base power, so it hits very hard when you're at +6, Calm Mind boosted.
Yep.
Uh, and I think the good props to Lazy Boy for having defog on Oricorio to get rid of electric terrain and two hazards around mid match. Those were Toxic Spikes were doing a lot of work, as well as the Stealth Rocks. They were doing a lot of work, and thankfully we're able to go away. And props to Pokemaster because early game he was getting a lot of switch initiative. He was using U-turn and stuff, a lot of momentum going in his favor, and eventually he just was blowing back. Early game, I really thought Pokemaster was in control. The Scream Tail, its screens didn't really matter. Like we didn't see reflect, but light screen didn't really come into play. Uh, but like I said, Ursaluna can always tear through a team. And honestly, I was very nervous. I wasn't sure how much Florges was going to take from a Blood Moon, because especially we saw earlier in the game. I think a +1 Blood Moon wiped out Hitmontop in one shot, which really surprised me. I'm pretty sure my eyebrows went up. I was like, "What the heck?"
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
one
You.
hit KO,
Yeah.
very devastating.
Yeah, you cannot underestimate Ursaluna Blood Moon ever. Like, that thing is, it's not only is it so strong, but it's so bulky too. Like, it just does not die. And you get that thing in Trick Room and you're in for a bad time. So obviously that was not the case here, but yeah, Ursaluna Blood Moon is always a force to be reckoned with. And I
Uh,
agree with you. I think if
It,
had he prepped a set to counter the floor just a little bit better, I think that Blood Moon could have been a huge game changer.
Lazy Boy actually did have Trick Room. Screamtail used Trick Room the last turn it had, and it died to the poison. So
Oh
Ursulina did
yeah, that's
actually
right.
have 4 full turns of Trick Room.
I almost forgot about it, but it
Didn't
didn't matter.
really.
Yeah, unfortunately, it didn't
No,
matter.
it
But
didn't. It did not matter. He couldn't break the floor just now.
yep,
Out. Pointing out to what you alluded to earlier with Quacklevolt being at +2 speed and +1 attack. I think what was going through Lazy Boy's head was uh, if Iron Moth is on electric terrain, or sorry, not Iron Moth, if Raichu is on electric terrain, its speed is doubled and it will outspeed Quacklevolt anyway. So I think Lazy Boy, knowing that, was trying to preserve Quacklevolt because he needed it to take out Florges. So I think he was playing a little cautious there. I actually thought he played very well in the end game, gave him the best chance at coming back with that, but wasn't enough to take Florges out, and Florges just did its thing. You can't beat Florges in a Calm Mind War. I'll just say that right now. Florges is probably the best Calm Minder, I think, just because it's so especially defensive. Minus maybe if your opponent has Psyshock, then then it's okay. There you go. But
yeah,
Florges is queen Calm Mind user.
fair enough. Fair points. I agree completely. Um, absolutely. So, but yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up talking about this match here. And I think that is pretty much going to do it for this video. So there you have it. There are your BHDL4 Week 3 games. So, like I said, a lot of high octane games there. Quite a few upsets this week, a lot of hacks along the way, but all around an interesting time. So, yeah, that'll pretty much do it for this one. This seems like a good time to let you guys know that I will actually not be around next week for a week 4 recap. I am actually going on vacation for a week, so there will be no week 4 recap next week, but you're still going to get the BHDL4 week 4 matchup, and then it'll just kind of cut to the week 5 matchup after that, and then I will return with the captain's recap for week 5. So, but yeah, that'll pretty much do it. Thanks for watching again, everybody. I hope you all enjoyed it. Hit that like button, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff if you did enjoy, and stay tuned for more new videos in the future. Of course, I would like to thank my guest, the Abomination, for joining me here to talk about all of the action in the BHDL Season 4 Week 3. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for having me here. It was pretty fun. Now, as a disclaimer for myself, I mean, no offense to anyone in this entire video. I know I said a lot of, I think they should have done this instead. I mean, no offense to anyone.
No, it's all good, man. It's at the end of the day, it's opinions for entertainment. That's all it is. So we're all good with that. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and it was
I just don't want
definitely
someone to be mad at me.
nah, you're good, man. If you get to be me, you just get to embrace it after a while, you know. Um, but yeah. So definitely, it was a blast, and like I said, I'll see you all for the week 4 and 5 games, and the week 5 recap. So yeah, that'll do it. That's it, and we'll see you next time.